second question would be, in your books, you strongly advise the readers to adopt an attitude that be both open-minded and skeptical at the same time. Do not believe anything, even when I say it, okay? It's usually what you say there. You experience it by yourself. Taste the pudding. Could you please, in short, explain why you do so in order to clarify our audience here, because we are not claiming anyone to believe in anything?
No, as it turns out, belief is one of the big enemies. You know, the real thing to avoid here, the enemy in the camp is fear. Fear is the opposite of love. And fear generates ego, self-centeredness, and it generates beliefs. So if we get rid of fear, we need to get rid of those beliefs as well, and that ego as well. Ego is basically awareness in the service of fear. That's how I define ego. So yeah, I'm probably the only person at the end of a lecture, I tell all of my audience, don't believe a single word of anything I just told you. And that's because it's not useful to have a belief. And it's a belief whether you believe it, and it's a belief whether you don't believe it. Those are just both beliefs, and neither one is useful. You have to live it. You have to experience it. You have to understand it from a personal viewpoint. It can't just be something intellectual stuck in your head. Okay, you know, you can memorize the My Big Toe books so that you could, you know, repeat all the books word for word and still not learn anything. It's not, if all the learning is just intellectual, that's not much. You've just got a shadow of what's in there to get. So I tell people, don't believe it or not believe it. Just keep it in your mind as a possibility. And you can give it some probability if you like. Say, oh, well, you know, that sounds pretty crazy. I only give that a 10%. Well, that's okay. If you only think it's maybe could be right by about 10% and 90% that it's wrong, that's all right. At least your mind is open. So that way you can do your own research. You can you can get acquainted with your own consciousness. You can find out for yourself, read, study, and see whether or not indeed this theory explains your life. Not just the science you know, but your life. Does it explain your life? After you've read the theory, do you have a better idea of you know, the significance and meaning of the things that have happened in your life? Well, that's important. If it doesn't relate to anything in your life, well, don't read the book. You know, if you're through the book and you can't find anything that relates to your life, then I suspect you should put it down or use it to start a fire. You know, do something else with it. It's not helpful to you. And I would say that, you know, you're not ready yet for it to have valuable meaning to you. But it just isn't valuable to believe things. See, when we believe something, we don't believe that we believe it. Everything we believe, we think is a fact. Now, other people look at our beliefs and they see our beliefs as beliefs, particularly if they disagree with us. They say, oh, well, that's just a belief. But we see our beliefs as facts, and everybody sees their beliefs as facts. So if you believe things, then you have these pseudo facts, these false facts in your mind. And if you have that, you're no longer open to learning something new. It closes your mind off. I call that a belief trap. So when you believe things, you shut yourself off from further information about that subject. Anything that comes in contrary to your belief, you just throw it away, deny it. You know, you refuse to process it. That's the nature of belief. So belief is the enemy, and you need to be open-minded always, but you also need to be skeptical always. If you're open-minded but not skeptical, well, you're liable to walk down, you know, la-la lane, you know, and be all wadded up into a lot of things that aren't true and aren't useful. So you always have to be skeptical. So those are the two things. And if you are open-minded and skeptical, both, then you will eventually end up at the right answer. You see, the truth is not fragile. The truth is not delicate, and the truth is really not all that hard to find. You just need to approach everything with open-minded skepticism, and eventually, not necessarily quickly, but eventually you will find the truth, because you'll be open to new data always, and you'll be skeptical of that data always. So that's why I say it's, open-minded skepticism is the only way to approach anything. Anything else, you're liable to end up trapped somewhere in your own beliefs, or your own lack of skepticism. And once you're trapped, you're no longer making progress toward the truth. So that's why I say that. Like I say, that it startles people when at the end, after they sat there for 2 days listening to me speak, I tell them, don't believe a word of it. Kind of startles people a little bit, but it's important that they understand that you just hold it off to the side as a possibility. Then let your own experience tell you what's true and what's not, because if it's not your experience, it can't be your truth. You can't walk around with, somebody else's truth, somebody else's experience. Well, that's their truth perhaps, but it's not yours until it's your experience. And I think we have to be that way. Otherwise, we're likely to, kind of walk off into la la land and not even know it. So that's an important part of this process. Always be skeptical of everything. And the person you should be most skeptical of is yourself. Be skeptical of everybody, but be doubly skeptical of yourself.
Okay. And I believe personally that's one of the things that attracted me most in the beginning, that called my attention, because I was reading the introductions of the book, and then you start even in the introductions telling that. And that's very strange for sure, because we are not used to seeing that all around, okay? And it gives some credibility for you to at least try to be open-minded, to look at the whole thing. It's a very important advice. And then the fact that you keep telling that is important too along the book, because, in the meantime, you start looking and it makes sense. And then you sometimes in some point you may start believing it, and it doesn't produce any good to you, as you said. So it's good that you repeat it there too. But I personally think it's important. That's why I even made the question, because I believe it's important even now as we are talking about it.
Yes, it's actually even more important now than it was, say, 100 years ago, because now with all the media that we have, it seems like there's no end of people who are trying to convince us of one thing or another. It's just, there's no end of people who are trying to get us to believe what they say. And it's not a good idea. You need not to listen to that. You need to just make up your own mind based on your own experience and do your research. You have to go dig. Sometimes that takes effort and time to do your own research to find out what the truth is. But you should never believe what you hear or what you see. What's that old thing? Believe, what do they say? Half of what you see and none of what you hear. Yeah, that's a good thing, but you don't have to disbelieve it either. You see, disbelief is just another belief.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the same as believing it or disbelieving it are all the same. They're just both beliefs. You just need to keep an open mind and be skeptical of everything, particularly now that we have internet and other things that are just bombarding us with information. It's so easy to get wrapped up in somebody else's story, Don't, I'd say don't do that, make sure it fits with your experience.
And especially because, as let's say, evolution is an individual process, a personal process. You can use the others as a reference, as an example or whatever, but if you don't reach that same knowledge by yourself, the same experience, it doesn't matter just to follow the herd. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to seeing Brazil and having some fun and meeting a lot of great people there.